Oh, hey, everybody. How is it going today? Christina, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How about yourself, Chris?
Oh, I am doing absolutely fantastic. So excited to have everyone here. This is a topic that I am super pumped about. But before we get it, well, actually, let's do a little preview. We're going to be talking about CICD brought into the Power BI and Fabric space. Is that right, Christina?
Yes, it is. Finally,
Ah,
finally, finally.
so excited about this. Like, this is just such an exciting, awesome moment. But before we jump into any of that stuff, let's just quick do a rundown because apparently people don't know who the heck we are. So, my name is Chris Wagner. I'm a Microsoft MVP, celebrating 4 years as an MVP. Super excited about that. Thank you for all your support and everyone. I really appreciate that. I'm also a director of data solutions at Baker Tilly. So, if you ever need any help or assistance, you can find me over at bakertilly.com/digital. Happy to help you guys out professionally speaking, or just ask questions in the comments. Happy to just talk through stuff too as well. So, Christina, why don't you introduce yourself? Because when I saw your Twitter handle, I was like, oh, Christina is going to go far. She is going to be big, cool stuff. And I have something that I was going to tell you about that you may not know about how big of stuff you're going to be, but we're going to get to that in just a second. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay. Yeah, well, I'm Christina. Nice to meet you guys. If I haven't met you before, happy to see you. I'm a senior data and analytics consultant over at 3Cloud. So I've been doing that for a couple of years now. Recently got into the speaking world and was at SQL Bits over in Wales and got inspired. And so my Twitter handle is Data Dragoness, for those who don't know. And I have an absolute blast with it. I've
Well,
been in the,
but
yeah,
hang on, you come from a long line
I do.
of like it. Data is literally in your blood, right?
Yeah, so some of you guys might know Steve Hughes. That's my dad. So he spoke for a long time in the SQL Saturday circuits. He was on the board of directors for the past Minnesota group. So I love the guy. We thankfully work on different sides of data where I tend to be more in the Power BI space. He tends to be more in the database space. So we're able to kind of work together in that way without stepping on each other's toes too much, which is fun.
Well, and for those of you who don't know Christina, because she's relatively new to this space, she is making her impact on the data speaking space. So I'm excited to have you on the show because I was talking with some people at Microsoft, and I found myself talking with Rui Romano about like, hey, want to get you on about the DevOps, the CI/CD, and it came up. I'm like, well, I've got Kristyna Huges coming on. He goes, oh, Christina, she is amazing. So I am
Wow.
blown away. Like you're no, like you're a named like individual. Like I'm excited, so excited to see it, what you have to show us today. But
Well, that warms my heart.
yes,
I'll have to say hi to him. Hopefully, he's going to one of the big conferences coming up. Since I'd love to meet him, and I can't wait to see you again too, Chris. So
oh,
it'll be
awesome.
great.
Now, how did you get into data? Was it just your dad, and he like at some point around the age of 12, like hit you, like and beat you, said it's gonna be sequel. Like, was that how it went? Or what tell us what was your journey into the data sphere?
So ironically, I didn't want to go into data at first. So I ended up going to school for anthropology. Realized really quickly that I didn't want to teach anthropology, so decided to go into the workforce. Ended up in logistics, booking trucks on the side, learning Power BI during my lunch breaks,
Mm.
and ended up putting together some presentations. And they went all the way to the analytics team. They hired me onto their team and ended up taking over that team at one point because we transitioned everything from Click and Tableau to Power BI. So became team lead, and the rest is history. So I really enjoyed consulting with data. I love solving complicated problems, and I think I'm in the right spot.
That is so exciting. That is fantastic. Yeah, Donald has it right. So let me post this up there. Donald is saying like he was he was going to guess an English major, but what I want to hear from people, what major did you graduate in, or did you study that made you go, whoops, maybe this isn't for me? So it sounds like you got your degree in anthropology and then you went on to something else. I
Yeah.
studied in philosophy because I liked symbolic
Oh,
and going down that path. Um, but I went over to the logic warehouse or factory, and the logic factory turned out absolutely no jobs. In fact, there was no logic factory in town, and I went, you know what, this is. And then I went to the philosophy factory, and I wanted to apply for a job at the philosophy factory, and again,
no
like
jobs.
the place didn't even exist, like so no job. Um, uh, at that point in time, I switched over to computer science because I was already taking computer science to support my philosophy work.
Ah,
So now I switched it, so it's like computer science or philosophy to support my computer science work. So
very nice.
here in the chat, what other degrees were people pursuing at one point in time, or majors that they may have shifted from? So awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right. Well, this is a lunch and a learn. We've been doing some chit chatting here, and it's good to get up to speed and knowledge each other. But as we always do, before we jump into our lunch and learn, we know hopefully you've grabbed your food, you've grabbed your drinks, you've grabbed your beverages. You're sitting back, you're listening, you've got your notes out because Kristyna is about to drop some knowledge bombs on us. But before we do, we're going to grab our beverage. We're going to say cheers to learning, and we're going to take a big
Cheers.
old sip of our drink, and then we're going to jump right into it. So. All right. And I saw Power Mates are doing this too. So like, hey, let's always toast and make a cheer to data before we get going. So
I
awesome.
like that.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Kristyna, I've got questions. I like. Well, actually, let me take a step back. I contend that data ops and CICD is one of the most critical jobs that any data team needs to have on that a lot of people are missing. It's
Yes.
something that didn't exist when I was actively engaged in building and working in inside like the day-to-day stuff. But I think it's one of the first things I look to stand up. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would honestly equate it to a SQL DBA, right? They're the new
Oh,
glue that's kind of holding your team together in some aspects where they're setting up environments, they're setting up these pipelines, and they're maintaining them. But one person can maintain a lot of teams.
oh my
So
gosh.
we get the benefit of at least knowing how to work with individuals in that kind of capacity, right? Where they might not be in our team or we might not see them as part of, your data analytics team, but they're a vital part to making it run and make it operate smoothly.
Well, that is, in fact, I'm putting this into like not just the chat, but I want to get it onto like our live stream. So just a second here. That's brilliant. I love that quote, and we're gonna put that up there. DataOps CICD is the new DBA. Kristyna Huges. You guys, you've heard it here first. This is the brand new DBA position that your team needs to have, and that's endorsed by Kristyna Huges and Chris Wagner. So if you have any problems in getting a dedicated data ops or a CI/CD person on your team, you can point to this point in this clip and showcase people like, no, this is what we need to have. If you needed to have DBAs, you need to have this capability. So, oh,
And I
love
will never knock DBAs, by the way. Not knocking DBAs. Still vital.
it.
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Don't
yes,
take away
yes.
all my permissions. I promise we still love you.
Oh, awesome, awesome. Okay, so we're bringing out do this stuff. Kick us off here, Kristyna. How should we start looking at this stuff?
Yeah, well, if you're cool with it, we can go over to my screen real quick. I've
Oh
got
yeah,
a
let's
couple of
do that.
slides for us. So, getting CICD. I'm a big fan of puns, as you guys are going to find out pretty soon. So hopefully nobody is allergic, but we'll get through it.
Hopefully nobody's allergic.
There are some word heavy slides. So I do have a GitHub feel free to ping me later on LinkedIn or on Twitter. I can send you guys the slide deck as well. Because Git is kind of complicated, right? There's a lot of different terminology. There's stuff we might not be familiar with as data folks that really is coming into the forefront of what we need to do in our everyday work streams. So I'm going to go ahead and hop over here. I just kind of want to give you guys a high level intro. Like, what is Git, right? I love this guy, this little seasoned salt. I think we got to start adding CI/CD to our projects. It makes everyone better. It really helps with a few things, right? If I had to roll it all up, I'd say source control management, collaboration, version history, and then summarized into CI/CD. I love it. But continuous integration and continuous development, that's basically what it's all about. So if you hear CI/CD, those are what those terms mean. Continuous integration just means that you're constantly able to add new code into your existing deployment or into your existing production environment. And continuous development means you're able to continuously add new stuff while it's running. So kind of fun. We'll get into some of the details of that. I've had many people ask me, why do I need CI/CD, right? Especially if I'm just by myself or am I in a small team. If you guys have ever run into this scenario where you don't test your code, but when you do, it's in production. I like to say that everybody tests their code. It's just a matter of who knows when it's being tested. If you're testing it on your own, then chances are you catch a lot of bugs before your customers do. So just be aware of who your QA team is.
So hang on. Well, two things. I'm forgetting we forgot some ground rules here, so we got to establish that. Apologies, and we're going to go back to this in 1 second. But you made a good point about testing. This is why my contention would be that all business intelligence and all data testing and integration testing should be done with production workloads at every level in the environment, so you can ensure that what you're producing is going to work in production. If you're using a small subset of the data or just made up data, you'll never know if your logic and everything balances out until you get it to production. So that's my first contention there. But I actually have to lay some ground rules. I apologize, Kristyna, for breaking your flow here. I'm a bad host. What can I say? So we are going to be following the guy in the cube roach rules. Hey, rule 1, prefix any question with a Q so that we can get that queued up to make sure that we ask them appropriately. And then rule number 2, do not repeat questions. Repeating questions will get you banned or temporarily blocked and whatnot. Moderators can do that. If you got the little like monkey wrench by your name, you'll be doing that. So let's not do that. We've got a great community here of good people on this on these live streams. So hopefully that's not going to be an issue. But just want to lay the groundwork. And I want to make sure that people are getting questions queued up. Kristyna doesn't have to watch the questions. I'll watch the questions. So just put a little queue on them so I can kind of keep track of them. Help me out there. All right. Sorry, Kristyna, for interrupting.
Oh, you're fine, Chris. Feel free to interrupt me with a good question, too, if you've got one that pops up.
Okay, good deal. Thank you.
Yeah, I just got memes for days, so we can always pause. I will say that something that always comes up, and I think someone mentioned it in the chat, is you never really get until you get got, right? So basically, if you're running into that scenario where you're redesigning your reports all the time and people are telling you these things don't work, even though you tested them on your local machine, you got to figure out a better way to do this. And that better way is often CI/CD. So what we're going to do is we're not going to test our stuff in production, and we're going to code for future you. So just remember, nobody's perfect. That includes yourself. That includes the stakeholders who are asking you for report changes. Consistently, they will ask for changes to the report. And that's a good thing, right? If nobody is using your report, then they're not going to ask for changes to it. So if you're hearing nothing about your report, that's probably also a bad sign in a different direction. But sticking with the concept.
Wow, that is a great point. If people aren't asking for feedback on your reports, it means they're probably not using it.
Correct. Yeah.
Because data is ever changing. What are priorities today are not going to be the same priorities tomorrow. So yeah, if they're not asking for changes, it's not relevant anymore.
And
Wow.
it can be hard to know if you haven't changed something in over a year if you're not keeping track of your changes.
Yeah.
So this kind of does lend itself really well to continuously improving your reports as well, another CI to the CI/CD.
Mm.
But yeah, definitely something to keep in mind. I think people get scared of feedback, right? Because that means that something's not perfect. But if it was perfect, we wouldn't have jobs. So I'm okay with it.
Wow. Holy cow. Knowledge bombs for days. All right. If it wasn't
It's
perfect, we wouldn't have or yeah, that's awesome. Okay.
I got you covered, man.
Yeah.
We'll make a few t-shirts. No, just kidding.
I'm working on it. Give me a second.
Just kidding. Just kidding. But yeah, so I think the power of
Uh,
CI/CD, it lies with the ability to make a copy of your code. So you can develop, you can test somewhere that isn't where your stakeholders are seeing it. Having that separation of development and having the separation of development and production really makes a big difference. I need one of those t-shirts. I'll have to go back and get that link.
they're super low quality. So
Even better.
yeah.
But yeah, so the idea here is that you're going to separate those two things so that they can both operate at their highest capacity, and with proper testing teams, right? You don't want your stakeholders testing what you're working on, but you also want them to be able to use the best product possible.
And
So,
this is also where I really think that testing team becomes super valuable because they can start to
yeah,
produce regression tests that you can bake into your CI/CD process. So, because like the features I develop today, I want to always run correctly, right? I don't want
exactly.
I don't want Chris from 2 months from now to come along and because I hate that guy. That guy sucks. He's always rolling out changes and he's breaking the stuff that I'm building out. And like I want Chris from 2 months from now to not be able to deploy a change that's going to break the work that I did today. And that's what we get in a robust CI/CD framework, right?
100% correct. Yep. And I think that when I say using Git enables multiple developers, I'm not just talking about multiple people. I'm talking about multiple versions of yourself too, right? Like you bring up a
Um,
great point. Like future you is another developer. So you
yeah,
need to be able to make sure that anything that you guys are working on is not going to interfere with itself. So,
completely agree.
yeah.
Screw that future me.
This is the wordy screen. So I'm sorry in advance, guys. You can take a screenshot of it. I won't talk through all of it. But I do want to have one spot where somebody could say, okay, what are the get commands and what does get mean? So
Mm.
I've got some of the main definitions up here. I've worded them myself. They're not coming from some kind of textbook definition. So hopefully that makes it a little easier to understand. But in case this is overwhelming to you, and I'm just going to have it up here for like maybe another couple seconds. Um, I do have an analogy, Chris. I have a good
Oh,
metaphor for this. So I'm excited to get into it.
let's go.
All right. Oh, first of all, don't panic. So I just want to make sure that nobody has panicked and then we can move on. All right. So our metaphor today is going to be train tracks. And I know what you're thinking, Kristyna, didn't you just come out with something called data on rails? Is this a plug for data on rails? No, it's not, but that was the plug for data on rails. This won't be. Um, this one is going to be more focused around the fact that, in my opinion, tree is not a great metaphor for what Git does because branches never go back to themselves on a real tree. So I just have a hard time visualizing it. So hopefully this helps other people as well.
Oh my. Yeah, that makes much more sense.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
So if you think about it like a get station, right? I've got these different sections. So I've got the file copy is in green, or the branch. The commands are going to be in yellow, and my one stop point in here for a pull request. So let's say that we're going on our track, right? And our main track is going to be our main production ready code. This is going to be what's in production. This is going to be what people are using. Then what happens when we need a new feature? Or let's say we need to change a visual. I'm going to go ahead and create a new branch using what's called checkout. So you can kind of see where that track is going off, right? Our main train is still running. He's still doing fine. But what we're going to do is take a car off that train, pull it into our new branch, and make some changes. So when I make changes, I'm going to call that staging. So when I'm staging, I'm going to be adding different things to it. I might be taking out different packages that I no longer need. For example, let's say that there were 16 pie charts on there. Maybe I need to pull out those 16 pie charts and put them, in a dark corner somewhere else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull them out of my stage and I'm going to get those changes ready to go. Now you might notice I've got this little ladder guy, right? So this little ladder guy, I'm calling the push, pull, and sync. These are 3 separate commands. Sync does both of these things in that order of pull and push. But to kind of explain what I'm talking about here, let's say, for example, that there is another track. And I kept this visual really simple. But the whole idea here, right, is there could be multiple of these branches going on at the same time. So let's say somebody else's reconnects with the track before mine does. When that happens, I need to sync mine back up to main. So what I'm going to do is go over my track, grab from the main and make a copy of it and pull it into my car. So that's what I'm going to do. That's going to be my pull, and I'm going to sync it together. Now what push does, and this is going to be a little confusing, guys, so it'll be easier when we actually see it. Analogies only go so far. But essentially what get is doing behind the scenes is it's making a local copy of everything that you can interact with, you can play with. And there's also what's called a remote copy. And that remote copy sits on top of the main branch. And that's what gets merged at the end. So you have to keep those in sync too. So there's a couple of syncs that go on here, right? We have an option to make sure we're aligned with our main branch, we're getting the new material we need, but we're also making sure that anything I've got on my local machine is going to the cloud. So that's also another function of sync. So I just wanted to be clear with you guys, there are 2 different layers here, and it will be a lot easier to see when we go into a demo. I've got it running in Visual Studio Code. It's super easy to see there, so we'll take a peek at that in a sec. Now, after I've got all that ready to go, I've got my final product in its little carriage. It's ready to get reconnected to the train. What I'm going to do is commit it. So that's kind of that B tractor is going to go and slide into the actual main branch. Now, there's a stop point there, pull request. This is where it becomes really vital to have some kind of review process. In my opinion, you don't need a review process to do this, right? Nobody is stopping you from not having one, but it is something that can make your life so much better. Is having a stopping point where you go to your peers and you say, hey, this is what I'm thinking of implementing. Does this make sense? Am I going to break something else? Does this work? Any ideas on other things maybe I should add in before I push it to main? And that's what a pull request does.
All right. So
that was a lot.
Question. That is a lot. And I absolutely love that visual. I want to go back to that. And I think Mark Walters has a very good question here that I want to ask. But what you've talked about here, I think, is so critical, and that's that code review process, so that like the people in your space that really know what they're doing have an opportunity to look over code, so that we could test if this is actually going to work or cause problems, and we can start to learn best practices. Now, I used to go through like formal like code reviews. I remember being part of those, and that was it was very educational, but potentially very challenging and difficult to do and to coordinate. Kristyna, have you ever been through a code review or on these pull requests? What are the types of things that you like to look for when reviewing code before it gets merged in with master?
Great question. I think Kevin's on this call. It depends. I don't have any dollars. I'm sorry. I think it does depend. Yes, thank you.
I got you. It's my only one, but I got you.
Okay, I'll try and not say that.
It's all right.
But it depends on what code I'm looking at, right? So if I'm looking at a Power BI report, am I looking at the data set or am I looking at the report visual side? Because
Okay.
to me, those are two very different things that I'm looking at. Um, Typically, the biggest gotchas are going to be things that you look at and you don't understand what they're doing. So the moment that you look at something as a reviewer and you say, I'm not sure what they're actually doing here, stop. Because if their code can't speak for itself, then they need to speak to it. So that's the biggest thing with any
Oh,
language. Yeah.
I love that. If what you're looking at doesn't make sense to you, stop. I think I like that a lot.
Yeah, you're smarter than you think. So don't assume that they're doing something genius that you can't just not understand, you know?
Right,
You have to stop.
right. Oh, I love that. And what that means is that pull request is going to get rejected and they're going to have to make some changes to it. I like
Yeah.
that. I like that because one of the things I've noticed is instead, since we stopped doing formal code reviews as part of our like deployment practices, when we could only do deployments on weekends, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
was like, okay, like, hey, honey, like I can't do anything this weekend. We're doing a code deployment Friday night at 5. We start. We do our deployments all weekend long, and then you know we did tons of code reviews for that to make sure that they're successful. Now that we have these advanced tools, we're doing less of that, but now the supportability of what's out there is far lower. So I like
Right.
that. If I don't understand it, I reject it. I make them go and do changes again. I think that's a great standard. All
Yeah,
right, I'm
because
gonna
you
go.
have to support it, right?
Right. And then Mark Walters asked a question here, and I'm gonna before I read out loud, do you want me let me or I'm gonna read it out loud, then you let me know if I should pull your screen back up for this question. All right.
Yeah.
Mark is asking, is the remote copy a centralized copy keeping track of all the isolated branch changes or no?
So the remote copy of your branch will only keep track of your branch's changes.
Okay.
So yeah, if you want to pull it back up, I can kind of show you what I mean. But
Yep.
basically, we've got that main track. Your
Yep.
remote copy doesn't touch that main track unless you do a pull from main, if that makes sense. So it can grab it, but it's not in there natively. It's not pulling from there all the time unless you tell it to.
Okay.
So it is isolated in that respect. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, I I like that, and uh I'm gonna like I like this. Christina's middle name is Wisdom. Yeah, you are.
You
Holy
guys are gonna
cow!
make me blush. I'm not gonna have any skin cells left, you know? It's gonna be
This
all
is
red.
fantastic. Yeah, I mean that just conceptually, you're. This is wow. Okay, just it's giving me a lot to think about. Where I normally in this section, I'm like, oh, okay, I know this stuff, but no, you're. This is awesome. And a Power Egg is asking a good question. I think. Regarding code reviews, while the
Yeah.
concept makes sense, when looking at Power BI, would you say there's a similar process to report design?
I'd say we're close. I think it's really hard. It's really hard right now with Power BI, even with the new CICD stuff they came out with, because it's all hidden in JSON scripts. So
Mm,
unless you can fluently read JSON and understand what exactly changed, it's going to be really hard to visualize what changed. And that's where I think their use of deployment pipelines, as far as having different workspaces, makes a big difference. Because what you could do is you can make sure that nobody, and if we have time, I'll show you guys a demo. I've got one set up. Otherwise, Chris, we're going to have to talk again. Um,
all
but
right.
but essentially, you can always block people from merging until they go through a pull request. That is something that is you can set up really easily. So with report design, with the new project files, instead of just looking at the JSON script, you can always like kind of stop that script from going through, until you have a chance to review it in the online service in those two workspaces between. So yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard right now with Power BI, even with the new CICD stuff that came out with, because it's all hidden in JSON scripts. test and prod or dev and test, see what's changed.
Yeah, I would agree to that. I would not look to the coding on the Power BI desktop to look at it and go, yes, that looks great and that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because we're crossing the line from looking at code to looking at what is visually actionable and something that you can do. Is this does it meet our report standards? All of that stuff. I think visually that's going to be much easier to test versus via code for a while.
At least for now. I think they're
Yeah.
making strides. If I had to venture a guess, the functionality to be able to open a Power BI file now from OneDrive and see it is
Mm-hmm.
a great step forward. It means that they're moving into that cadence of being able to visualize Power BI in the web outside of Power BI.
Sure.
So we'll see what comes up from it, but yeah, that would be my advice. I would say though, if you can read JSON or you can fake reading JSON like most people, you can identify what changed. You might not be able to see it in your head, but it might help you narrow down where you look in a report.
Mm.
So that's
Okay.
where I think it can be useful.
Excellent. Oh, well, thank you, Christina. All right, let's head back. You've got a whole thing here. So
I
good.
know. I'm trying, you know.
Slide 3. We're way off the tracks. We're off the rails.
Oh man, it's okay. We can get back on. We can get back on. No
All right.
problem.
All right. All right.
So this is kind of the next step, right? So now we've talked about Git. Hopefully we all kind of understand it a little bit better, what's going on behind the scenes. So how do I actually do it in Power BI? So I've come up with 3 options. We're only going to probably get to the premium one today, but just be aware that there are options if you don't have premium available to you. They're just not as smooth, which I think is on purpose. Um, I'll say that the first one is going to be get enabled workspaces with Power BI pipelines. Super cool stuff. Um, Basically, what that means is that they have already built a way for you to change your file and have Power BI write those changes into a repo for you. So you don't have to do anything else. It's pretty simple. It sounds crazy, and it is. There are a couple of gotchas with it, so we'll go through that. But as far as option 2 goes, premium per user, you can still use Power BI pipelines with premium per user and a repository on the side. The problem is that you can't actually connect the two, so you can't have a get enabled workspace unless you have full premium, which is kind of annoying, but it is what it is. They
Well, I
like us
think
paying money.
I would imagine with Fabric coming out and now having the ability to spin up like
Yeah,
lower tier capacities, that's going to become much easier, right? Now that we're talking about like, okay, you could spin up a $200 a month capacity that you start and stop. That that becomes much more viable, right?
I agree. Yeah, I think they'll have to figure out that stopping functionality because from what I understand, it kind of pauses everything. Um, and I don't know if I would want people to not be able to see their reports while I have it paused. But I'm sure we'll all play with it and we'll figure something out. But no, I
That's a
definitely
topic
agree.
for another live stream. All right, that's a
Correct.
whole another live stream. Let's
Well, I
just
look forward to
table
attending that
that.
one.
That's defined as out of scope. Okay, so
Thanks. Keeping me on track. I love it.
no problem.
I will say for option 3, that's the pro users, or if you have an E5 license, there are options to screen share code reviews, which I believe is similar to what we had talked about for Power Egg. And we can also have a repo on the side. So why would we have a repo on the side while we're screen sharing? The answer is like you can still have rollbacks then. You still get the ability to
Yep.
see what's changed, at least on some level if you need to. So
Oh, apparently PPU supports Git now, and he's tested and verified.
Kevin, can you send me a note on that? I just tried it last night and it did not work for me. So I don't know
Yeah,
if I'm just going crazy.
like someone had to like spin up a premium capacity and get Kristyna licensing and access to it.
Thank
To
you.
make yeah.
I was panicking at about 2 a.m. last night, going, I don't know why this isn't working. And
it's
then,
it's
but
okay.
it
Yeah,
worked
here
out.
you go. We got this. We got this.
I have that do not panic screen. It's perfect. Works every time.
Oh gosh. Wow, multiple hitchhiker references. Where's my towel? Oh, right there. My MVP towel.
Oh,
Or scarf as some people call it,
Mr. Pepe.
you know.
Yeah, Kevin, please let me know because I it was all grayed out for me, but I don't know if I'm just missing if I'm missing the trick somewhere. But
Awesome.
yeah,
All right. Here we go. Let's go back to it. Licensing
yeah.
and get
This is the
matrix.
last one, guys. This is the last
Okay.
slide. I promise. So this one, license and get matrix, basically just rolling up what we talked about in the last slide into like a nice, easy to consume matrix. So basically you can create the PBIP file or the project file with any of these. You can publish a PBIX with Pro and Up. You can create a DevOps repo with any of them and do any get operations with any of them. The little asterisk is because if your organization does not give you access to DevOps, then you obviously cannot create a DevOps repo, but that is outside of Power BI licensing. And typically they should be able to get you access. So there's just a little asterisk down there just in case somebody's locked everything down for you. As far as Power BI pipelines, you can use those in both. And get integrated workspaces, I will need to change once I see the proof in the pudding. So,
Aha. Test but verify.
yes,
That's right.
I'm excited to try it out. Let's just put it that way. But anyway, I know I've got my own premium per user that I love dearly, so it would be great. It would be great if it works with Get as well. But that's it. That's all the slides, guys. I have one for demo time, but I think we all know what that means.
Let's do the demo.
Yeah, buddy.
All
All
right,
right.
here we go.
So this is looking a little more fun, right? Already we got some fun icons. So the gracious data god has granted me access to this environment so I can actually build something for you guys. So the idea here is that we're going to build a deployment pipeline and we're going to connect some workspaces to it to start off. So in order to do that, we need to do a couple things first, which he's already done. I believe, let me just quick flip over into my screen real quick, my other one, just to show you guys these premium features, or not premium, but these tenant admin features. So there are a couple of things that we needed to flip on first. So if I go to get, and these tenant settings have gotten out of control. I don't know if anyone else has noticed. I think they need a search function just within the tenant function, the tenant settings. I just use Control F because I'm efficient. But if you go underneath Get Integration, you'll notice that there's this feature here. Users can synchronize workspace items to their Get repos. You have to toggle this on. This is off by default. Without this, you won't be able to do what we're doing next. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and flip back over. So first things first, I'm going to make a deployment pipeline. It's as simple as that. I just click that button. Again, if this is not highlighted for you guys, like let's say, for example, if I click on enough of these, it goes away. Well, maybe not in my bigger screen, but if it does go away, there's typically 3 dots down here and you can click on it again. Just a little rocket ship guy. I'm going to go ahead and create a pipeline. I'm going to call it Dragon's Den. And we're going to go ahead and create that. So now what happens is we get these handy dandy little buckets. Now, we haven't talked too much about this process yet, but essentially, if you've been hearing the same words I'm using over and over again, we have a development environment, testing, and production. The reason why you would have these 3 split out is so that you can have one that's always fluid, one that you're constantly changing. And then when you're pretty happy with where it's at, it goes into test. And then from test, it kind of stays a little bit semi-static, right? So if you need to make more changes, you can in the development space, but test is where you typically have that team that comes in and looks at it and sees what's going on. From there, you can deploy
And
to
hang on,
production.
I
Yeah.
believe we have one housekeeping thing. I want to just take a moment. Vanessa asked this question, and I think while she didn't preface it with a cue, I think it's important enough that we're going to call this out and we're going to bring this in. So when it comes to Fabric and the different levels, uh, Fabric for the most part is going to support all. The compute you're getting is the compute you're getting. The only other potential cost you have is storage. So when you spin up a Fabric capacity, you're going to get access to all the different capabilities that are inside of there. The only limit that I'm aware of, and I could be wrong, but the only limit that I'm aware of right now is that you have to have an F64 to share Power BI or reports and analytics broadly inside your
Mhm.
company or outside of your company, and that capacity has to be on when you're sharing it. When you're sharing it to people, okay? Um, so, um, uh, while you can turn it on and you can make people access this stuff at lower levels, it's that 64 level that has to be on for that sharing and that enablement. But if you're using an F1 or you're using an F2 or whatever other levels, I don't have the names memorized yet, you'll be able to do all of these things with your capacity. Okay, awesome. So
Perfect.
back,
Thanks, Chris.
you bet.
Yeah.
Back to your example.
Yeah. So this one, right now I've got no workspaces connected. It's saying, hey, you don't have any workspaces. That's because you have to have the little diamond next to a workspace that you've either created or you have access to. So for example, if I go ahead and I make a new workspace, and we're just going to call it CICD demo dev. Now, you might be wondering, why are you adding a dash dev? That's so that when I'm deploying from Power BI or from a PBAX file, I know exactly where it's going. This is where if you're a tenant admin, it makes a big difference, where you can go ahead and lock permissions to the other ones if you need to. So maybe nobody gets access to publish to production except a certain team. So just keep that in mind as well. So I'm going to go ahead and go into advanced, and I'm going to go with premium capacity. We'll set it to the fancy Eureka. So if I go ahead and apply this, I now have a new workspace called Demo Dev. I can use this in my deployment pipelines. Now, if you're thinking ahead, you are correct. We are going to make one of these for each. So if I've got another one, I'm just going to call it a test and then add it to the capacity as well. And we'll do this super quick.
Isn't it
Once we,
nice going into a new Power BI environment where you don't have a million workspaces that you have access to?
it is blank, man. I've never seen that. It's so fun. Oh, it's amazing. So thank you.
You're welcome.
But yeah, so okay, so now I've got these workspaces. They've all got this fancy little diamond. That's how you know you have a premium workspace. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my deployment pipeline. Again, it's this little rocket ship. And now I'm going to get these options, right? I can choose which workspace goes into which stage. It didn't guess for me. I think that'll probably come eventually. But for now, I just click these little drop downs. And obviously, if you have a lot of options, this is going to be a much longer list. I will call out, you can only apply a workspace to one pipeline. So if you have a dev, you can't have one dev workspace that goes to all your pipelines. It's only a one-to-one relationship. So I'm going to go ahead and assign these guys. And you'll notice we get this fun little check mark. So what this means is that it can actually detect changes, which is super cool. So it's awesome to see the difference between what I've got in dev and what's in test. Sometimes that's half the battle, is just knowing if you've changed anything recently. So what we're able to do is avoid that question mark with these. But that's not what we came here to see, right? We came here to see get. So what I'm going to do is we're going to make this a get an integrated workspace. So I'm going kind of quick here, but if we go through workspace settings, you'll notice there's a section here called get integration. If I go into organization, I can find a get repo that I've made. So I'm going to back up a step. You will need a get repo before you start. So you're going to need a get repo that you can connect to at this stage. So I'm going to go ahead and flip over to DevOps real quick and show you guys what that looks like. So I've kind of backed out. I did some testing, but I deleted everything so you guys can see the screen as at start. Because I think sometimes it gets really confusing if you've never used these tools before. So I'm going to fly through this because we've only got so much time left, but feel free to pause this video later on. I know Chris leaves these up, so definitely review it later if you've got a need for it. So I'm going to call this project the same name, so Dragon's Den, or just Dragon Den. We'll keep it simple. Create a project here. Now, DevOps has a lot of permissions. We are not going to need to touch those for this. You guys should be safe from the DevOps permissioning nightmare. So what we're going to do is we're just going to like ignore everything in this sidebar except repos. That's all we care about. So if I go to a repo, you'll notice I get these options to clone or make an existing repo. These only matter if you have an existing repo. If you're starting from scratch like we are today, you can go ahead and go straight down to the initialize main branch with a readme or ignore. So I'm going to go ahead and initialize this. You'll notice it has this checkbox next to add a readme. Go ahead and use it. Readmes are really useful for inputting different notes about what your code is for or about how to run your code. You can always change it later, but it never hurts to just have one. So we're going to go ahead and initialize, and boom. Now I have a repo. So you notice, like we've talked about before, I have a branch called main. This is my default branch. You guys, we're doing the GitHub thing. We're getting there. We got our get main branch, and from there we're going to actually add some stuff. So the next thing I want to do is, this is where it gets a little bit opinionated. So you can either only have a main branch, which I don't really recommend because, right, we want our main branch to be production. So if I'm going to connect my development workspace to a repo, I want to connect it to a development branch. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new branch, and I'm going to call this the same name as my workspace so I know what it goes to. CICD demo dev. So again, that's CICD demo dev. And it's going to be based on main, and I'm going to go ahead and hit create. You'll notice at the top here, I've got this other branch name now. I can always flip back to main by clicking on this drop down. If you've got tons of branches, this is how you can navigate to new branches. Tags are really useful if you get complicated with this to be able to find things by a tag. But for now, we can just keep it simple. So I've got my branch, and I'm just going to go back to Power BI now because that's what I'm more familiar with. Now that I've got something to connect my workspace to, I'm going to come back in here, go to get integration again, and I'm going to find my project. So we just made one called Dragon Den. I'm going to grab that one. And in Dragon Den, there's a repo called Dragon Den. And in there, there's two branches that we have just made. I'm going to connect this to dev. And we're going to go ahead and connect in sync. Okay. So this is going to be the fun stuff. I'm going to fly through this. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and grab a PBIX file, which in another session, I'll show you guys how to make these PBIP files. But if I go to my desktop and grab a PBIX file real quick.
Sorry, Mark.
Oh, is Mark asking about something?
He had asked about that. I was holding off. I'm like, I'm sure we're going to get to it, but it'll be later. So, well, it's fine.
I can show you guys how to do a PBIP really quick, actually, if you want. If that's a concern.
It's all up to you on our next 11-ish minutes. How long? What you?
Yeah, let me show you guys.
Okay.
I think I accidentally prepared like an all-day seminar here, Chris. So that's on me.
Well, to be fair, I threw a challenge out to you, and
you did
that I don't think what we can do. In fact, we can't do. So it'll be all right. So go ahead and show this piece of it.
All right, I'm going to show you guys how to make a PBIP real quick. So if I've got a PBIX, and just to show I've got nothing up my sleeve, go ahead and go to my folder that I've opened this from. I just open things from downloads while I'm demoing to avoid any craziness. So I'm going to go ahead and go into File. First of all, you have to go into Options and Settings. Go to Options. From Options, you can turn on the Preview feature. So I've got these preview features, and fancy dancy, you'll notice this checkbox here for Power BI Project Save option. If that is not checked, you have to have that checked before you can make a PBIP. So I've already had that checked. If you don't, you'll have to close Power BI and reopen it. Once you do, if you go under File, you can do Save As. And if I go, let's just do my Downloads folder again, you'll notice that I get this drop down now here. Instead of PBIX, I can choose PBIP. It is that easy.
Wow.
So if I choose PBIP and I call this my demo report again, I hit save. A couple things are going to happen. If I go back to my downloads folder, you'll notice it keeps my PBIX file, but now I have two folders. I've got a report, a dataset, and a PBIP.
Ooh.
So PBIP files, you cannot publish from a PBIP file. You'll notice my publish option just grayed out. That's because technically I'm now in a PBIP file. The reason they did this is because they want you to go through the repo, or they want you to go through a deployment process. So the only ways that I've seen to do this where you don't need it is if you are saving to a repo and then publishing from there. The other option is you can always convert it back to a PBIX file. So I'm in a PBIP right now. And if I go to Save As, I believe I can just flip it back to a PBIX. So if I do that, then I have a version of it. It's not very clean. It's not very simple. But if you wanted to have it both ways, that's how I would do it.
Okay.
At least for now.
So if I have a PBIP, how do I do a deployment now?
Yeah, so if I've got a PBIP, so I have this handy dandy repo set up, right? And it's connected to my workspace. Let's try it out. So I'm going to do a couple of things. And again, Chris, you're going to have me back. I'm really sorry.
It's all right.
But I'm going to clone this, and I'm going to go quick. So I'm cloning it. Cloning is the word that gets my remote branch to a local branch. So I'm going to go ahead and clone it. Open. Now it opened in another screen. So let me see if I can get it. What it's asking me to do is assign a local folder that this can write to. So I've got one set up already that I just call Data on Wheels, and I just use that for my local branch. But if I create this as my repository destination, a couple things happen in Visual Studio Code. Once I get connected again, it's going to ask you for some authentication. There we go. I would like to open the clone repository. So now that I've opened it, you notice I get these handy dandy drag and den. I also get something that looks like source control. You know, so we get our little branch.
Something like source control.
So I'm going to go to that source control button. And you'll notice that I have this source control repo thing. If you're not seeing that on default, you do have to turn it on. So if you go to source control, typically what you'll see is this. I like a little more detail, so I hit this little 3 dots and I go to View and Source Control Repositories, and that lets me easily switch between my branches.
Oh. I'm going to have to come back and do this because that's where I'm lost all the time. Okay.
And it sounds like maybe I need to make a video and I can tag it, or we can do another one of these, Chris. But this is the stuff that trips everybody up,
Yeah.
is how to actually do it from your desktop and get it into a workspace. So I'm more than happy to fly through it real quick, and we can always come back to it.
Awesome. Yeah. Keep
So
going. Keep going. Don't stop me, or don't stop because of me.
yeah, I won't. No. But okay, so a couple things. I've got this Explorer. This Explorer lets me see what's in my repo. So you'll notice we have our README file. What I'm going to do is reveal this in File Explorer because I'm lazy and I don't want to hunt for it. So because we had to make that local one, it goes ahead and it finds it for me. Super easy. So what that means is I can just take my downloads file from here, take these three, and I can just copy it there. And boom, look at that.
Wow.
I now have files I can navigate that tell me about my actual Power BI model, about the configuration, the layout, all kinds of fun stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go back to the source control button. You notice these all have little U's on them. It means it's untracked. So if you hover over these, it'll always tell you what it means, but it might not tell you what it means, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So green is usually a good thing. It means it's something you've added, which I guess is not always a good thing. But green is add, red is remove. So if I were, for example, to add something, and we'll remove it in a second, if I just add this get ignore, I'm going to go ahead and go to my source control button. You notice we have all these changes. You remember how I said we have to commit them? We have to stage them in those little containers before we can ship it off to main.
Right.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stage them now by hitting the stage all changes because I don't want to click all those plus signs.
Oh.
This is where you can undo something. You can discard a change you've made.
Okay.
Which is super nice if you know you've messed up somewhere. Now, stage commits is still not even the final step. You could still unstage something and undo it if you need to.
Okay.
But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and commit it. So I'm going to go ahead and call this add Power BI report. And you can put whatever you want in here. The goal is just to be descriptive so people know which change to go back to if they need to. So I'm going to go ahead and hit commit. Now from there, you'll notice we get this handy dandy little arrow. Do you remember push and pull on those ladders?
Yeah.
So push will push it back up to my remote branch. Because right now, if I go into my DevOps repo, those files aren't here, even though I'm in the same branch I've been editing. It's all still on my local machine. No changes have actually been made. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to sync it, which will do a push up. I'm going to hit OK.
Okay. So can I try to restate this quick before you go to the next thing? I push from my desktop.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I've pushed it and it's available in DevOps, then I do a pull it into the main so that I can make that available to other people. Is that right?
Well, you'll merge it to main.
Merge to main. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
You're close.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, pull would be, so let's do an example of a pull. So let's say, for example, somebody else made a change to this branch, not on my local machine, on their local machine. Mm-hmm. To simulate that, I'm just going to do it online. So if I go ahead and add a new file, and I'm just going to call it testing. And we're going to say
I gotcha.
Testing pull. And I commit that. Added testing. That works for me. I'm going to go ahead and commit that. If I go back to my local branch, again, in this file explorer, I don't have a file called testing. It's not in there. But if I go to my source control, I can actually hit this sync, and that will pull it in, or I can hit these three dots and hit pull.
Okay.
And that will grab that new file for me. So now if I come back over here, I have testing.
All right. I got it. Keep going with your thing here.
You're doing great. No, no worries. So this next step is going to be, let's see. So what I wanted to do is, now that we've got this in here, I actually want to go back to Power BI real quick and see if it noticed anything changed. So if I go to source control, you'll notice it already found that these 2 updates have been made on this branch. So it has picked up the data set and the report and said, hey, these are 2 updates that happened on your get branch that aren't in this workspace. So changes are going to be things that happen in my workspace but not in my get. Updates are things that happen in get but not in the workspace. A little
Okay.
confusing, but roll with it, you know. So if I go ahead and update all, it's going to go ahead and pull this in for me.
Holy cow. Look at this. We now have our demo report out there.
Mm-hmm. And it just takes a little bit, but it's going to pull out the report and the data set for me, no problem. So you can see where this would be really powerful if I'm committing against dev and somebody else is committing against dev, and I maybe have only updated the data set in the background, but not the report itself. They can still make visual changes while I'm adapting the model.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that was worth the price of admission right there.
Yeah, this is the moneymaker, my man. So, but you can see where this really trips people up if you're not used to get, because there's so many steps in between to get it here.
Right. Now,
Yeah.
we are nearing the end of our time together, unfortunately. And the challenge I put out to you, I think, still stands. And
It does.
my contention is, it is time to stop using Power BI data sets, because I think there is a better way with our Git merge and control than just connecting to the data sets that are in the service. So I think we're going to delve deeper into that another time. Yes?
I agree.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, Kristyna, thank you so much for your sleepless nights, your hard work, your diligence, your effort, your data dragoness that has been put into this. We have been very blessed to have you. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And thank you all for stopping by and joining us today. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to learn about this. I hope you learned something from these sessions. I know I learn something every week. So it's really beneficial for me to be part of these. I hope it is for you as well. Kristyna, do you have any parting words? Where could they find you? Where are you performing next?
Yes, I perform on the, no, I'm just kidding. I am actually getting married in October. So if you want to reach out to me, feel free on LinkedIn and Twitter, but I'm not speaking at as many user groups as I was. So something about planning a wedding just takes all my time. So,
well,
but very happy to reach out. Like, so I'm data_dragoness on Twitter. And then on LinkedIn, if you spell my name correctly, that is all you need to do to find me.
All right. just spell my name right. You'll find it. It's pretty easy. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, I gotta say, there's not many Kristyna Huges that spell it like this, so it's usually a one and done.
All right. Well, Kristyna, to everyone here, thank you guys all so much. You guys have a great day, and we will see you. Oh my gosh, I forgot. Fabric Fridays. 7:30 on Friday. Kevin and I, we're going to be going over some more stuff on Fabric. I'm pretty excited about this week, so please tune in. So other than that, you guys have a great day. Peace. Baker Tilly Digital combines strategic industry insight and advanced technical expertise to uncover and solve your digital transformation challenges. If you're interested in learning more, check out our website at bakertilly.com/digital.